Good morning, Hope Kids, and welcome to Sunday School Online. I am Miss Grace and I am the Sunday School teacher here at Hope Church. I am so glad to have you join me this morning as we start our new unit, Into the Promised Land. In our last unit, we learn about how God rescued his people from slavery in Egypt. He led them in the wilderness and taught them the right way to live to honor him. When they were hungry, God gave them food. And when they were thirsty, God gave them water. God dwelt with his people, and he taught them how to love him and how to offer sacrifices when they sinned against him. You would think that the people had gotten really good at trusting God's promises. Well, we will learn today how they continued to struggle trusting God. Our story today is called Joshua and Caleb. The story of Joshua and Caleb comes from the book of Numbers, chapters 13 to 14. When Israel arrived at the edge of the Promised Land, God instructed Moses. God instructed Moses to send scouts into the land. Moses sent out 12 men, including Joshua and Caleb, to check out the Promised Land of Canaan. So off they went and returned with some fruit, pomegranates, grapes, and figs, and they reported back to Moses. The scouts said that the land was so amazing that it was flowing with milk and honey. They also said that the people of the land were very big and strong, and they had big, strong cities. Caleb was so excited, and he said, "Let's go now!" But most of the group didn't want to. They were scared that the Canaanites were bigger and stronger than them, and if they tried to enter the land, that the Canaanites would kill them. So the Israelites complained again. "If only we had died in the land of Egypt, or if only we had died in the wilderness." Joshua and Caleb tried to remind the people of God's protection, but the people would not trust God. So God gave them what they thought was going to be better. He sent them into the wilderness to wander around for 40 years, and they would die there. Only Joshua and Caleb and the Israelites' children would get to enter the Promised Land. No matter what God did to prove his faithfulness, the Israelites always seemed to turn away from him or to believe wrong things about him. Joshua and Caleb trusted God to give his people the Promised Land, but none of the other Israelites trusted him. They thought God was leading them to die. The enemies living in the Promised Land were big and strong, and they did have big cities. That was all true. Even so, God is more powerful and bigger and stronger than any enemy. By refusing to enter the Promised Land, God's people were showing that they believed the lie that God wasn't big enough or strong enough to protect them and fight for them. It's too easy to read this story and think that the other 10 scouts were foolish for being afraid. I tell myself that I would be like Joshua or Caleb, but we distrust God sometimes too. A lot of times, actually. Every time that we choose sin over obedience, it shows that we don't trust that God's commands are good for us. Do you know what it means to sin? To sin is to think or to speak or to behave in any way that is against God and his commands. Sounds like sin's pretty unavoidable, right? Well, that's why the gospel is such good news. God knows that we all sin. Sometimes we even sin in ways that we don't totally understand or even know about. Although we all deserve punishment for sin, God sent Jesus to rescue us from our sin. The Israelites rebelled against God by not trusting him, but Jesus trusted God perfectly. When Jesus died on the cross, he took the punishment for our sin that we deserve to pay. And when we trust in Jesus, we are trusting that Jesus cleared our debt for sin and makes us new. It's only because of Jesus Christ that we are justified and get to live with God for eternal life. Joshua and Caleb trusted God to give his people their Promised Land. Trusting God is important. By not trusting God, we are sinning. And because God knows us better than anyone, he knows that we sin. And he knows that we are full of pride and we won't trust him. And that is why he sent Jesus. And that is why we need to trust in Jesus. Well, that wraps up our lesson outline for this week. You can find all of the Hope Kids resources for this week in our app, Hope Reformed Baptist Church in the media section. There is a Bible story video, some activities for the kids, and there is also a parent's guide for mums and dads to go through with their kids for reviewing and discussing this week's lesson to help your kids better understand the biblical truths that we just outlined. Know that I am praying for you all. Have a wonderful week. Be good to your mum and dad. And until our lesson next week, God bless.